Hello, so this is just a little video I thought I'd do, a little fun idea to contrast my start of my project with my visions and how it actually ended up on stage. So my start ideas, I didn't really have an influence for it until I had a workshop with Jess right at the start of the this year of 2025 where she mentioned actress Jodie Comer, and I was like, you know what, that's going to be my influence, I'll work around it. And actually Jodie Comer ended up being my main influence for this entire project, as well as her one-person play she did for National Theatre. Well, it's not hers, she was the lead in it, of Prima Facie, which was written by Susie Miller based on her own experiences as a lawyer, like Susie Miller's own experience as a lawyer. And I took them three and decided I was going to create a one-person solo show on stage like Prima Facie based on my own experiences like Susie Miller, and that was going to be chronic pain and chronic illness. And I decided to focus on chronic pain for me and then get a verbatim idea for chronic illness, which worked really well. Because chronic pain, I got answers to my chronic pain and I moved on from it. And whereas my chronic illness, I don't actually have answers for yet. And my verbatim idea was using one of my social media followers, Jess, who used to work for the NHS and volunteer in A&E and stuff, but her life has changed completely because of her endometriosis and medical gaslighting. And then it slowly became very apparent that medical gaslighting became the running theme throughout the performance, which I really liked because it is a big topic that not many people actually talk about unless you've experienced it yourself when trying to find answers to a chronic illness. And I wanted it to be a bench on stage, just one singular bench for me to talk on, and hopefully still have my script on stage even if I'm just holding it. Now, that did work until I had the idea of putting in audience participation, and then I had to change the bench idea because I was like, the bench is going to be too big for just me, and then I'm going to be sat at one end if I'm bringing people up. So then I thought chairs. So 2 chairs on stage right next to each other, and then I can also swap between my multi-rolling by swapping between the chairs. That I did not do either. And the end result, I also struggled with costume because I was like, oh, for costume I could get like a hospital gown and things like that, and it completely slipped my mind for the rest of it. And then I got towards the end of the week, ready for the show on the Wednesday, and I was like, oh god, what do I do for costume? So my end result looked like this. So I had 1 chair on stage and 1 block because we had a large audience. So we just had I had 1 chair and 1 block, and the block was used for the audience and the chair was used for me. Lighting, I just wanted natural the whole way through to make it more like an inclusive atmosphere and more like a close-knit atmosphere, which I really liked. And then also that worked. I wasn't as close to the audience as I would have liked, but that was due to lighting placements. That was nobody's fault, and there was no way I could have changed it with the time that I had before my performance started. So that is how that came about. And then finally, for costume, I decided to go for Theatre Blacks because the idea is that scratch projects are unfinished. So mine was unfinished in the sense of actually learning the script for one, because I had it in a prop, this prop here, which is a medical record prop taking the mic, with my script inside, and with my script inside, just like that. And I was reading from that. It was on my lap like this the whole time, and then I could just look over it if I got lost, which I did for quite a bit of it. But I also stopped to add my own little puns and my own little jokes to make sure that the audience knew it was okay to laugh at myself. And I added so many more inside jokes that I thought I would, and they were so well received as well. Like, I got so many laughs from my performance, which is what I wanted. I just wanted people to be able to laugh at me and be like, oh, she is quite funny when she's talking about herself, or she can have a laugh when she's talking about herself. And I was like, yeah, I can. And because that was one thing that really scared me, I was pushing myself way out of my comfort zone with this project, but I thought it'd be nice to contrast this project to my very first one, and it worked really well. Worked really well because I was like, well, I'm going to be on stage on my own with no one else to help me. I'd have to make eye contact with the audience because I'm literally talking to them. So it sounded like my worst nightmare. Like, when I started the project, I was like, this is going to be my worst nightmare. And then I wrote the script way too long, so it had to be shortened, and then by the time it got shortened down that much, I was like, you know what, I think this is going to be okay. And then I added some stuff that wasn't in the script, and people liked that so much. I was like, yes, I've hit it there. So I'm actually really happy with my performance. The only thing I'm not happy with my performance at the end was how much of the verbatim and interview material I missed out on, because I started to lose my way a little bit. I started to get a little bit nervous. I was thinking like, okay, I'm so close to the end, but I didn't want to look at my script because it would have been like, oh, she's forgotten a line, so I was like, you know what, instead of looking at my script, I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to try my best. And I just kept occasionally looking down to see little pinpoints where I could pick up at. But yeah, I did sort of lose my way at the end until I looked at my final paragraph and I was like, you know what, I know it now. So I finished my final paragraph, and then yeah, that was my performance done. So it pretty much stayed, start versus end, it pretty much stayed the same apart from the odd staging changes, because I wanted to add a few extra little bits into my piece which were really well received. So yeah, it stayed pretty much the same all throughout. So that is my start versus end. I think the only thing that majorly changed was the staging and the set, because I wanted a I just wanted a bench, and I was like, you know what, that's way too big. So I got a chair and a block. In the end, it was supposed to be 2 chairs, but it ended up being a chair and a block. And then I also wanted to do multi-rolling and sort of sit between them, sort of like move. So like, I was playing myself sat on this chair, but when I was on this chair, I was the doctor and I was talking to the person. I was talking to the patient. But that didn't work because of my own needs and my own accommodations I had to make for myself with my own chronic illness and chronic pain. So I managed to do that really well. And adding little everyday references from my comedic influences, I think went really well. And I did nab a couple of their jokes, I'm not gonna lie, just to sort of like keep the tone of it up, because once I have a couple of jokes in my mind, I can figure out the rest myself. So I think I used 2 jokes from Jack Whitehall's comedy show that I used, but I did enjoy using them, because then that set me up for the rest of my running jokes, which I did, as well as me. I sort of played a version of myself that would be a bit more sarcastic and a bit more sarky than normal, and I did test out some stuff that I don't think I would have done, like swearing in my piece was not something I wrote down. No swearing was scripted, but I think I said 2 swear words in the whole thing, so I was like, okay, well, we're running with it now because I've said it. But yeah, those were all unscripted, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. Somebody else has sworn in their piece, so I'll just go with it. But yeah, that was my start versus end for my performance piece.